do you think it's possible to actually do real work on an iPad? That's a huge question. And actually, Pete BRAUER, which is convinced of that, will try to give us some hints on how to achieve this goal. And you might probably know Pete from being the creator of Git2Go, which is one of the best, for me, one of the best iOS client for Git. And I'd like to invite him on stage and talk to us about his way of working with iOS devices. Thanks.
So, it's on. Great. Hello. We are right on time, 45 seconds late, but that's okay. I'm talking today about designing pro apps, which is part of the design section of this conference. So it's also my first design and product talk, so bear with me. I'm also just a developer. So first of all, who am I? Was quickly introduced already, but my name is Pete BRAUER. I'm Pete BRAUER on the internet. And I'm an indie iOS developer and sometimes freelancer. And I'm the maker of Git2Go, a full-fledged iOS Git client. And I don't often push to master, but maybe sometimes I do from my phone. And while I was developing Git2Go, I got into this productivity suite of software on the iPad, and I realized maybe I can use my iPad as my main device instead of my computer. So right now I use my iPad Pro for about 70% of my work. Is it flickering? Okay, anyway. It's not the iPad. Can we? Yeah, can you stand like that? It's okay. It's just some strobo lights. It adds dramatic things. So first of all, we need to understand before we build pro apps who are our users and who are pro users. Okay, this is getting really annoying. But I'll just keep on. So who are pro users? And when I talk about prosumers, I also what I mean is really prosumers, but it's kind of a fishy term, so I try to avoid it. But prosumers are described by Wikipedia, for example, and defined. A prosumer is a person who consumes and produces media. And it's a late 80s .com era business term, which was derived from the word prosumption, which means production by consumers. So what it really means in real terms is it's less Netflix and more video editing, is less watching recordings of presentations and more giving presentations and doing presentations, and less watching concerts and more GarageBand. So I think we have a great understanding of what prosumers are. And what I discovered when I developed Git2Go is who are prosumers, who are the people who use the app. And it's mostly people who travel a lot for work, be it inside the office, like from multiple levels, going to meetings and so on, or be it traveling around Europe and the world or whatever. And people who do that, they have one goal, like they travel so much that they really, the time they can spend on work, they have to focus a lot. And that's where iOS comes in. They're also technical leaders and early adopters. So I talked to a lot of team leads. They want to try out the iPad and also give it down the chain to their employees, see if it's feasible for them. Before they buy 20 iPads, they want to try it themselves first. Yeah, and it may be not you right now, but it may be your manager or boss. He's trying it out. And I talked to a lot of tech companies, and they're upper level VP and engineering stuff. They all try it out. So there's this great thing called the technology adoption lifecycle, which is a product development term. And what you can see is it goes like it's a bell curve usually, but Keynote wouldn't let me do it. But so also on the Mac I tried. And it goes from innovators to early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then goes down to laggards. And where we are right now with the iPad Pro, I think, is right there. Still at the early adopter stage. That's why you don't see 50 people on stage presenting with an iPad Pro, but just one, the iPad Pro guy. So, what are early adopters? And the people I talk to, they are really nice, really friendly. Even if they have a high position, they don't say, well, your app doesn't work, blah, 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 and I can't do that. They try it out, and they are okay with making sacrifices. And that's a huge plus for you as a developer in this early stage, and also for them as a user. Because they can influence their software, and you can influence their workflow. So both can influence each other. They are also extremely friendly, they are extremely influential, and if you can make the app work for them and work with them on their workflow, they have also a high influence. As I say, they try it out for their teams. It's still flickering. And yeah, then buy a bunch of iPads and give it to their team to do some work. So, you are probably right now, it's like, why PC or Mac? Why you have to make it this difficult? But bear with me, I think I have a point. So why iOS? As I said before, people want to focus on their work, right? That's what we're here for. You want to have as much work done in your 8 hours as possible. So you want to be less distracted and focus more. And the way iOS does that is by providing only 3 screens you can have on your iPad at one time. It's split view, 2 apps, and 1 picture-in-picture. One example of that is you can have a Skype call or a conference call and picture-in-picture, and 2 apps side by side. For example, you can edit in a conference call, you can edit a Google Sheets document while taking notes on the other side about the conference call. So you can live edit the document. And that's really about it. I mostly use it with 2 apps, so it's completely fine. On the Mac, you barely use more than 2 apps at the same time, I think. At least I do. You have LTE built in, which is like no Mac, for example, has LTE built in to date. You can't just put a SIM card in your Mac. And what it enables you are not relying on your coffee shop Wi-Fi and your train Wi-Fi or anything. You can just always be online. You don't have to ask anyone for the Wi-Fi password. It really enables you just to be always online and do your work wherever you are. You have an all-day battery life. Apple claims around 10 hours. I achieved kind of a 9 hours, good 9 hours, 9.5. So that's really good. So it doesn't go out of battery that soon. And you can even carry a battery pack, which you still can't do for MagSafe, for example. It has the same power, CPU and GPU-wise, and even more than like the 2015 MacBook, which is great, and it's a great device. And the next point is really crucial, and it makes a huge difference when you compare working on an iPad and working on a Mac, and that is direct manipulation. And what I mean by that is when you do a presentation in Keynote, for example, you use your mouse or your trackpad to edit an object on the screen. So you're not touching the screen directly. Whereas on the iPad, you just touch an image, drag it around, and pinch and zoom it, stuff like that. So you have a direct manipulation and a direct connection to the objects on the screen. You have also the Apple Pencil available, which is great. It's really precise for drawing and sketching and taking notes, and it detects your wrist, so you don't move around and do funny things with your wrist on your screen, which is a huge advantage. And it's also more robust because it has less moving parts. There's no fan, there's no hard drive. It just has one port, which is really robust right now. And it's just way easier to handle while you're on the go. You just put your iPad out. If you don't have space for the keyboard, you just leave it out and just use it. So what do prosumers use the iOS device for? Right now, what I was able to find out is they use it a lot for writing because writing apps are great. For example, Ulysses on the one side. it works great in full screen. Lots of apps have less distraction mode, so they just go full screen, just full screen text, and you can focus on your writing. Many people still write emails, don't ask me why, but it's mainly their job, organizing people, writing emails, doing Office documents. Office works great on iOS. We have 3 Office suites, Office 365 from Microsoft, Outlook, and Google Docs, Google Drive, and the apps by Google. And yeah, you can do almost anything. Like I do all my Excel sheets and in Google Sheets, and it's really great. And what's maybe not a very obvious use case, but it's great for aggregating data when you are outside the office. So if you think service technicians, people who are traveling around and just going to customers and fixing their things, and it's great for that. And Apple has made some great examples and worked with great companies on these issues. And I want to show you 3 different use cases for using iOS in business. The first one is Schindler, which, if you may not know it, is a company that produces escalators and elevators. So they move around 1/7 of the population each day, so 1 billion people. That's kind of a lot in shopping malls and train stations and whatever. And what they have is they have a lot of service technicians all around the world which maintain and repair the elevators and escalators. And what they have is they have this huge crate of handbooks with them. So they need to travel by car because they have 30 kilograms of handbooks with them with all the different escalators and elevators. And they would open up the reference, look which part was there, and write down a sheet, go to the office again, order it, etc. So it's very cumbersome, very, it's not a great process to doing. I mean, if you have an elevator and it's broken, you want to have it fixed by tomorrow, not like the next 3 days. So what they did is they developed an iOS app for the service technicians, so they can go to the elevators, type in the reference number of the elevator, see all the parts, and can order the parts directly from the iPhone. And it's really less error prone because elevators, it seems that they are kind of different. So they have a lot of different parts in them. So it makes it less error prone. It's handy because they don't, I'm carrying my iPhone right now and you probably don't see it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And they got rid of the handbooks. It's all online. It's always connected. They don't have to ship out new handbooks if a new elevator comes out or is installed. So they can just download it from the internet because they're always online. Yeah. And they also have, which I find really cool, is they have a custom accessory which lets them plug the iPhone into the elevator and read diagnosis data. So they can see what's broken and they get useful hints in the app on what might be the problem in the elevator. Mic dropped. The next one is IBM and the IBM Mobile First for iOS initiative, which is a partnership formed in 2014 with Apple. So it was the first really big one that Apple announced, and it was kind of weird because Steve Jobs didn't like IBM that much back in the days. So, but yeah, now they are fine, and they're building great things together. And what they did is they partnered, so Apple put in the UX consulting thing, and IBM all the business knowledge. And they developed great apps for pilots, mechanics, insurance agents, nurses, police officers, so they don't rely on the laptop anymore. And the key point here is you are always online. In the plane, you can't really walk around with your laptop because that looks really weird. So you just have an iPad or an iPhone and check the passenger list, for example. Or pilots that have the handbooks on an iPad and in PDFs. It's just great. And they look just beautiful. I wish my apps would look like that. So, next one is a great example of what looking beautiful really makes a difference. It looks shiny on marketing pictures, and if you say you're mobile first, but it's also great for users. And another company who realized that is SAP. So if you ever worked with SAP, I have not, but I have friends who work with them. It's really like, it looks like the picture down there, which is what you imagine if you hear SAP. But the picture above is an iOS app by SAP, and it's built around their new iOS design language for iOS. And what they did is they not only develop iOS apps with Apple together, but they also develop an SDK for third-party developers to access SAP data and make their SAP apps more beautiful, easier to use. And I can imagine you don't have to spend 2 months of learning the system and still won't know what's going on. So, corporate initiatives aside, do people even want these apps? Oh wow, that was a big blackout. What I found a study by Salesforce Germany, which is why the study is in German, but I translated it for you. And so what they found out is that 49% of the participants in the survey already use a smartphone and 23% already use a tablet for work. And the other 28% we just ignore, because I don't know why they don't have a smartphone or tablet. But what the point is that the hardware is there, right? So people already have the hardware, so that's not a problem. Companies are keeping up with the technology. But then you ask them, okay, well, the apps you have on your smartphone or on your tablet, what do you use them for? And 83% of them said, we use them for private. And only 17% we use it mainly for business. So only 17% of these people use business apps, which they can accomplish business tasks in their daily life. So, and then they went ahead like, well, if you don't use it, do you even want them? And 52% of the people said, of course we want some. And the point here is for you to have an open ear and listen to these problems, because it might be your next company. So what they wished for, oh, now we can see it again. What they wished for is they want apps for project documentation, for expense sheets, travel itineraries, and sick notices. Because the last thing you want to do if you're sick on the couch at home trying to recover is open up your laptop, connect to a VPN, wait for it to dial in, and then send an email to all the people who might have interest in that. So what can you do to get these gaps in the app ecosystem and maybe get rich on the side? Use your iPad as your only computer. If you don't have an iPad, buy one. Or lend it from your company, because we're all app developers. We all have to test it. And my point is, use it for a weekend. You can easily lend your iPad from a weekend from your boss if you ask nicely, and maybe say you will become a 5x developer after that. So just ask them. I think they're going to hand it out to you over a weekend, because no one is working on the weekend anyway. And what I did is, I did this myself, right? That's why I came up with Git2Go. That's why I'm talking this to you, because I'm living the example. So leave your laptop at home, go somewhere that is kind of remote, that is not your home. Go to your parents, if you want, or rent a house somewhere at the sea, and try to get work done. Try to write a blog post, or edit pictures from your camera, or prototype in Swift Playgrounds, because that works great now. Really try to get work done and stay open-minded. And what you will see is that you will be surprised how much work you can actually get done, and how much tasks are not as nearly as impossible as you might have thought before you did that. And yeah, the other thing you have to do is then build your solutions if you find a gap somewhere, and maybe get rich in the long term. So let's say, okay, you're not as indie as I want you to be. So how do you make your existing apps a delight for prosumers without going through the rabbit hole if you work for an agency, like, oh yeah, we have the new design and we have to sign up for a new contract with the customer. But you can sneak in little things that make things greater for iPad Pro users. And there's only 4 things I want to talk about. The first one is support split view, which was introduced in iOS 9 and the iPad Pro. And it's really the key of being productive on the iPad, because what it does, it transforms your device that can only run your app at once and transform it to use 2 apps at once, which is, it makes such a difference. I mean, it looks not that much, but it really makes a difference. And you do that by just providing a launch screen storyboard and saying in the info plist you don't want to require full screen. And it should be really easy if you already have a universal app, because on the one side is just an iPhone app, on the other side is an iPad app. So it's really, if you already support iPhone and you already support iPad, there's no reason why you shouldn't support the in-between state. Next one is split view controller and making use of the screen real estate. This is my app, good to go. It looks beautiful on there. And what it has a UI split view controller. On the one side, you see all the commits. On the other side, you see the commit detail. And that's around, I predict, like 70% of the apps have some sort of table or grid and have a detail. And you can make great use of UI split view controller, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to rewrite all your navigation structure, because what a split view controller acts as on a smaller device, for example, iPhone SE, iPhone 5 SE, or iPhone 6s or 7s, is it just acts as a normal navigation controller. There's no difference to the user at all. It just makes a difference on the iPad where you can see 2 things at once. Yeah, great examples for that are Tweetbot, which uses a 3-column layout. They built something custom. And also Ulysses, they also built something custom, but this is plain UI split view controller. I didn't want to build anything custom. So the next one, the third one, is keyboard shortcuts, which you might have heard of. It was really popular when the iPad Pro came out, and what you can see is this is Slack, the iPad app for Slack. Looks like a desktop app, right? And what you can do is hold down the command key on the keyboard, on any keyboard. Doesn't have to be the Smart keyboard. Hold down the command key and you get an overlay for the current screen on your available keyboard shortcuts. And you can use your existing methods you tie to some buttons in your UI and just call them from the keyboard shortcut. So there is no additional code you have to write. It's just one line, and it says, I will show you later, but it just says tie this key to this action, and then you just call it, and it's just as if the user taps your button. You can take that a bit further and use a library or build it yourself, like KBKit, a keyboard kit, to navigate your iKit, for example. You can use the up and down arrows for table view and the left and right arrows for navigation controller, so you can really navigate your app as you would in Excel if you would be an Excel wizard. And it makes a huge difference to users because you can just tap and blah, 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 and it's really cool. You feel like something magical you're doing. And the last one is, please don't trap your users in your app. No matter what your growth hacking techniques are, don't trap users. Because it leads in the other direction. Because if users can't get the files they generate in your app out of the app, it makes no sense to them at all. And the way you support that is integrate document providers, support open-in functionalities, which is really easy. And yeah, for example, with document providers, you can open files from another app. For example, I can have a text editor and open files or folders from Git2Go and edit them in place without going back and forth and back and forth. What made the iPad really annoying, but since iOS 9 we have that. And it's really great. And the iOS file system has one, and it's really great. But not many people and apps take advantage of that, and that's the reason why people think it sucks. Yeah, great examples of that are Pixelmator, Transmit, and also Swift Playgrounds. So, 2 ways to improve your existing apps, and that's where it gets interesting with the microphone. I did a Swift playground. There it is. And it has a beautiful logo, so you'll see that, and you can download it later. And here is UI key commands. Oh, wait. So, now we can see it. What is here is we have a simple view controller. It just defines that it can become the first responder, which is necessary for UIKit to pick up your keyboard shortcuts. And then we have a method that, or a variable in Swift, a getter in Objective-C, that just overrides the default implementation. And what it is here is we have a key command that takes the input K, doesn't have to be lowercase or uppercase, and the modifier flag command. You can add other modifier flags that would be command, alt, shift, etc., like all the functional keys, right? And then we tie a selector to it, and it does give it a discoverability title. And if we would be out of the Swift playground, we would actually see it in the overlay, and it would say toggle, whatever. And on key press, we just count the counter, because counters are 4. Oops. There it is. So we have this app, and if I press Command K, you can't see it, but I do. We see this little counter going up. So it's really simple demo. And if we hold down the Command key, we see all the commands available in the Swift playgrounds. A second example, which is a bit bigger, but I won't go into detail here, because you download the playground later. And it's a navigation, it's a split view controller which supports all the ways UI split view controllers is needed to implement. So if you, for example, hold an iPhone 7 Plus in portrait and turn it in landscape, it switches to the master detail layout. So you have to do that manually. You have to take your view controllers and put them, separate them into master and detail. And also, if you turn it back, you have to put the detail on top of the master again, so you have a normal navigation controller again. And that's really cool. And if we see it here, beautiful. We have a simple table view and has a detail. This is a display mode item that comes automatically and switches to a back button if you are on a smaller size. And if we, just do that and would run it on a smaller device, it would just be a navigation controller. So if I tap on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, it would just push a new view controller. And all the logic is in there. It's MIT, so please steal it and implement it in your apps, because I want that in every app. So, yeah, you can download that later on my GitHub. It's already there. I just need to open it. And that's about it. 28 minutes later. Thank you.
So, thank you. We're really sorry for the audience. We're really sorry, Pete, for this flickering.
I'm also sorry.
Yeah, no, that's because of us. That's probably a technical issue. No, actually, to be honest, we tried to implement some kind of flickering system so that you don't fall asleep, but actually it failed. So we promise we're going to disable it for the rest of the conference. So you spoke about the Apple Pencil as being something that is like a really important feature. Is that really a game changer? And how do you actually use it?
So what I do, I'm not super sufficient at drawing, to be honest. But what I use it for is note-taking, and there's an app called Thoughts, which has an infinite canvas. So you can zoom in and out and all the way, and you aren't limited to a A4 paper sheet, for example. So you can really doodle around and make smaller graphs, bigger graphs. So it's really cool. Yeah, I like that, and it feels much better than than using, for example, like some of the rubber pencils you can buy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it worth the cost, right?
maybe.
Okay.
We have a question asked through our hashtag FrenchKit. Do you really code on your iPad? Means are there any apps you're partially coding on your iPad? I mean, Swift Playground is quite recent, but still, I know you were using it since day zero, basically.
Yeah, I got one from Apple. No. Yeah, what I did is, so my Mac, I was forced, not by going out, I was forced to use my iPad Pro as my main computer just recently when my MacBook was in a shop for like a week or something.
Oh, that's another reason. Like
yeah, so it's handy to have one at hand. And what I did is I set up a DigitalOcean box, just a plain one for €5 a month. Just SSH'd into it with prompt, and then use Textastic and SFTP to download the files and edit them, and if I save them, it automatically uploads them, so I can like test my server when like from coding from the iPad. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Like cool. And obviously, without the keyboard, like all of that is not possible.
Well, it's possible, but not as nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were talking about actually some kind of jobs that are itinerant and that will benefit a lot from being able to carry around a device easily. But I'm kind of thinking that probably there are also some like old jobs that are more fixed, but that would benefit also from a mobile device and that would become like itinerant job. So what do you think coming on those areas? Because I'm telling that also because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opportunities for app developers.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it, to raise awareness for that thing. And yeah, I see a lot of jobs that could be automated and that don't need a computer per se, but just a nice mobile interface. Because, for example, the mom of my girlfriend owns a little hotel. And what she does is she goes from the hotel back to her room, to her computer, to the office, and types in receipts, for example, for the guests, and then goes back and forth. But if she could do that from an iPad, and she doesn't need to leave the office, she has a MacBook, but she doesn't really use it. But if something would be tailored around that, these people that aren't like, which main focus is not to sit in front of a computer, but who are more like casual, using computers to help their lives, I think that could benefit a lot. Like there's a lot of potential there, also in traditional industries and stuff. Yeah.
Another question from the public, for the audience. Are there any productivity app that you would like to have on your iPad? And do you think Apple, this is a question of mine, can make better apps for pro users?
I mean, it's Apple's cause, which we are all supporting here, right? So they make pretty good apps. Like iWork has a lot of keyboard shortcuts, supports multiple screen resolutions, works on iPhone, works on iPad. They are living the example. Swift Playgrounds is a great example. And they don't stop by supporting iCloud. You can also open a Swift Playground from other apps. So if you download it from Dropbox, you have a Swift Playground in Dropbox, for example, you can open it from the Swift Playgrounds app. So they are aware of the issue and say like, well, okay, we have this document provider, it's our API, we should also use it and not like build this closed system again, because that's not what people want. And those are really great, really great examples. Other examples are, of course, the whole Panic apps, like Coda and Prompt and stuff. Textastic is also good. Yeah.
And what about, like you were talking about, like getting your playgrounds from Dropbox? What is that possible to do from, I don't know, an SSH app and then get the playgrounds file?
So in the README of the my playground, of course, you can. So what I built in Git2Go, for example, is a action extension that is system-wide available for strings and URLs. So you can clone a repository from Safari, for example. So you visit a GitHub or Bitbucket page, and then you can say like cloning Git2Go, open that, and then open that from Swift Playgrounds. If you make changes, it's automatically tracked in Git and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot possible actually. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll
Yeah.
have to move on. Thank you very much for being
Thank you.
with
I have
us.
one more question. Do
Oh,
you
wow.
have stickers of Good to go?
Fuck, no, I didn't.
Oh,
Oh, we need the stickers, so no stickers.
I'm sorry.
we are so disappointed.
Oh,
So
oh.
you really deserve the flickering.